Hello and welcome everyone to the Environment Primer series of Drishti IAS. My name is Pragya and today we are going to discuss the important climatic terms which remain in the news often. Okay, so the title of our today's discussion is A Glossary of Everyday Climate Terms. In this discussion, firstly we'll see the major environmental terms. We'll also see a practice question for your prelims examination and a practice question for your mains examination. So if I talk about the background of our today's topic, the COP28 or the 28th edition of the Conference of Parties is being held at Dubai from November 28 to December 12, and definitely you will be hearing about various climatic terms in the news. So we are going to discuss them one by one. So the first term you will be hearing is the Kyoto Protocol. Very important and very crucial in the climatic discussions. Okay, the Kyoto Protocol was an international treaty. Why I am writing that it was an international treaty? Because it expired in the year 2020. Okay, I have explained to you this time and again that Kyoto Protocol expired in 2020 and it has been now replaced by the 2015 Paris Agreement. It placed an obligation on the set of rich and industrialized countries to cut their greenhouse gas emissions by assigned amounts. So definitely it blamed the rich and industrialized countries for the greenhouse gas emissions because they were the preparators of the industrial revolutions, after which the global average temperature started to rise. So it asked them to cut their greenhouse gas emissions by a specified amount. It fixed their accountability in reducing the greenhouse gases emissions. Okay, and it was adopted in Kyoto, Japan in 1997 at the COP3 Conference of Parties, 3rd edition, also known as the COP3, and came into effect in 2005. The treaty formally expired in 2020, as I have informed to you also, and was replaced by the 2015 Paris Agreement as the main international treaty for coordinating global action against the climate change. Okay, so the Kyoto Protocol was an important treaty, was a crucial treaty for promoting reduction in emission in greenhouse gases, but it expired in 2020 and now the Paris Agreement has replaced the Kyoto Protocol as the main international treaty for leading the fight against the climate change. Okay, the second important term is the Paris Agreement. After Kyoto Protocol was replaced by the Paris Agreement, it is important to discuss what is the Paris Agreement and what does it talk about. Okay, so it was adopted in 2015 at the COP21 in Paris. The agreement is aimed to limit rising global average temperature. But the main problem or the main loophole about this agreement is that it places the developed and the developing countries at the same pedestal, and it does not talk about the specific amount of greenhouse gas reductions or greenhouse gases emissions. It leaves the area very open-ended that okay, reduce whatever amount you can reduce, but try to fulfill your 2030 targets. It's considered a landmark deal as it legally binds now 195 nations for the first time ever to combat climate change and adapt to its effects. So, though it has blurred the responsibility of the developed countries, but the treaty is legally binding. That means you will be facing sanctions, you will be facing punishments if you violate the Paris agreements. Okay. And it is very important in maintaining the 1.5 degree limit. So what is this 1.5 degree limit? We are trying to reduce the average global temperature by 2 degrees Celsius from the pre-industrialized times. Pre-industrialized times in the current century. And we are trying to limit this rise in the global temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius, and that is why Paris Agreement becomes even more important and it will help in limiting the rise of the global average temperature to 1.5 degree Celsius. The next term you will be hearing is the Glasgow Pact. Very important. I'll tell you why it is important. Okay, so it was reached at the COP26 summit in Scotland's Glasgow. The pact called for phase down of coal and phase out of fossil fuel. So in yesterday's episode of In Depth, we were discussing that India played a major role at various climatic conventions. So this phasing down of coal, for the very first time, the COP26 talked about coal and other fossil fuels. So it also talked about, India said that yes, not only it is not possible to phase out completely the use, but yes, we need to phase down the use of coal, and not only coal, but also other fossil fuels as well. So this COP26 Glasgow Pact talks about phasing down of coal as well as phasing down of other fossil fuels. This was the first time that a UN climate agreement explicitly mentioned coal, and the pact also marked the resolution of the deadlock over carbon markets. It basically consolidated the African carbon markets. We will be discussing what are carbon markets in our further slides. Okay. Then comes the carbon markets. Okay. So what are carbon markets? Let me explain to you in very layman terms. Carbon markets are those markets where carbon credits are traded. Okay. So the carbon markets form a very important market sort of thing where you trade in carbon credits. I'll explain to you what carbon credits are. And such markets are essentially trading systems in which carbon credits are sold and bought. So what do we understand by this term carbon credit? Let me explain to you in very simple terms. Carbon credit can be earned, like you can earn carbon credit if you are a company or an individual or a government, like, and you are, responsible for the greenhouse gases emission. So you can earn carbon credits by investing into those projects which reduce the greenhouse gases emissions, which bring about a carbon dioxide absorption from the atmosphere, and that is how you earn carbon credits. And you can then use this carbon credits to certify yourself as a low greenhouse gas emitter. So this is how you earn carbon credits, and you sell them, and you sell them where? At the carbon markets. So they allow countries or industries to earn carbon credits for the greenhouse gas emission reductions they make in excess of their targets. For example, a target is set for various industries and the governments, and they are reducing the greenhouse gases beyond their targets, and then they earn these carbon credits, and they also earn it by investing in those projects which reduce the greenhouse gases emissions or which help in absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and then they are traded at the carbon markets, and these carbon credits can be traded to the highest bidder in exchange for money. And what will you do of that money? You will again invest them into those projects which reduce the greenhouse gases emissions. Then comes another term known as the net zero emissions. You might have heard in the news that yes, we have net zero emission targets. India has said that it will achieve net zero emission by 2070. So what exactly is this net zero emission? A net zero emission does not mean the country will totally, reduce its or will totally finish its greenhouse gases emissions. So contrary to the popular belief, net zero does not mean completely stopping the greenhouse gases emission. It is also referred to as carbon neutrality. Net zero doesn't mean that a country would reduce its emission to zero. Rather, it is a state in which a country's emissions entering the environment are equal to the greenhouse gases being removed from the atmosphere, and the countries are devising new techniques for removing the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, such as creating carbon sinks by increasing their forest covers and protecting their forest covers, and by the process known as the carbon dioxide removal or the CDR. So all these new technologies are being used by the countries to reduce their greenhouse gases emissions and make them equal to the greenhouse gases already emitted in the atmosphere. Okay, so in 2018, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, also known as the IPCC, marked 2050 as the deadline by which the world must reach net zero if it wants to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Again, a very important target that needs to be achieved by the world. Okay, so the next term is carbon capture and storage. Another important term and a rather complicated term which you will be hearing during the COP28 or in the news. This term is basically a process that captures carbon dioxide and traps it beneath the earth. It's usually used at fossil fuel plants and factories where it prevents the gas from escaping into the atmosphere. So what are we trying to do? We are trying to capture the carbon dioxide and try to bury it beneath the earth so that it could not ultimately reach the atmosphere and hence it will not cause global warming. Notably, CCS is different from carbon dioxide removal, which involves sucking out of carbon from the atmosphere. They both processes are very different. Carbon dioxide removal is when you suck out carbon dioxide from the atmosphere by various means, by creating carbon sinks, by using advanced technologies. But this technology or the CCS involves burying the carbon dioxide beneath the earth so that it could not reach the atmosphere. The CCUS or the carbon capture, utilization and storage goes a step further than the carbon capture and storage and uses the captured carbon in the production of goods such as the alcohols, biofuels, plastics and concretes. So see how advanced we have become, how we are using the advanced technologies to prevent the carbon dioxide from entering the atmosphere. And definitely the developed countries have more access to these resources and they are helping the developing countries to build the required infrastructure. Okay. The next term is geoengineering. Another important term, it is the deliberate large-scale intervention in the Earth's natural system to tackle climate change. There are numerous proposed geoengineering techniques including the carbon dioxide removal technique. So, as I was explaining to you before also that we are using advanced technology, advanced engineering solutions so that we could emit the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and to reduce the global warming. Geoengineering is one of them. Their effectiveness and potential side effects, however, remain widely debated because these technologies are comparatively new and we have just started using them. But if implemented properly, definitely they are very useful terms in eliminating carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The next term you will be hearing is the nationally determined contributions or the NDCs. This is the first time we are taking a accountability from the nations that what are you doing to limit the climate change. What actions are you taking? Have you fulfilled your nationally determined contributions or not? So everything will be discussed at the COP28. Okay. So the Paris Agreements requires each country to prepare an outline for the efforts to reduce national emissions and adapt to the impacts of climate change. These commitments are known as the nationally determined contributions, and we often review them after every 5 years and we see that how far we have achieved our targets. Okay, they are submitted after every 5 years as I have informed to you before also, and successive NDCs are supposed to be more ambitious than the previous one. Definitely each country needs to achieve its nationally determined contributions if we want to fulfill our 2030 targets and if we want to make our limit our global rise in temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And we will monitor this nationally determined contributions at the COP28 summit that is taking place in Dubai. Okay. The next and important term is national adaptation plans. Okay. So the NAP helps countries develop plan to respond to climate change, present and future impacts. So this involves building all-season infrastructure, building resilience technologies to face the current and the future impacts of the climate change. They are aimed to reduce vulnerability to the severe effects of climate change and strengthen adaptive capacity and resilience. NAPs also play an essential role in updating and improving the adaptation elements of the NDCs or the nationally determined contributions. So we are trying to build resilient infrastructure, we are trying to build resilient ecosystems, we are trying to protect our original ecology as a part of the national adaptation plans. Okay, every country is trying to do so. The next term is global stock take. Very important, the whole COP28 is dedicated to the global stock take exercise. The global stock take exercise was the first positive, the only positive output of the Bonn Climate Change Conference. Climate change okay. So the whole COP28 is dedicated to the fulfillment of the nationally determined contributions to the global stock take exercise, where we are trying to take an accountability of the actions that we have taken to prevent the climate change. So it refers to a 5-year review in which countries assess where they are in the fight against the climate change and what needs to be done in the next 5 years to make this fight more effective and potent. So if I talk to you about this in very simple terms, it is a sort of inventory that we are trying to create. We are trying to take the account of all of the actions, and then we are trying to analyze that where are we lacking in our actions against the climate change. So this global stock taking exercise will be taken this year at the COP28, and this will be the most important term that you will be hearing in the news. Okay. COP28, which will take place from November 30 in Dubai, will witness the presentation of the findings of the first stock take exercise. So this is what I was explaining to you, that this is the very first time we are taking this global stock take exercise into account. Okay. The next is tripling of renewable energy. In 2021, the International Energy Agency, or the IEA, published its roadmap to net zero by 2050 report, which said that if the world needs to meet the net zero goal, it has to commit to tripling global renewable capacity by 2030. So we need to triple our renewable energy resources, and we need to find more sustainable renewable energy resources, because in case of India also and in case of world also, energy sector is the biggest contributor to greenhouse gases emissions, and that is why the IEA is stating that yes, if we want to achieve our net zero targets by 2050, we need to triple the use of renewable energy resources. If met, this single step could avoid carbon dioxide emissions by 7 billion tons between now and 2030, the agency has said. This would be an equal to eliminating all the current carbon dioxide emissions from the China's power sector. So this is very important if we want to achieve the 2030 targets, and this will be a big and a bold step in achieving our 2030 targets. Okay. Then comes the common but differentiated responsibilities, also known as the CBDR. So it is a principle of international law which states that different countries have different capabilities and responsibilities to address cross-border environmental problems such as climate change. International law is a dedicated branch of law which believes in solving environmental problems by having international conventions and treaties and making them legally binding. What do we understand by making them legally binding? That if you will violate them, you will be prosecuted and you will be facing sanctions. So it states that there are some common but differentiated responsibilities. Each nation is equal in taking action against the climate change, but there are some nations which have more capabilities, more resources, and hence they can be effectively helpful in fighting the environmental problems such as climate change. Okay, the example is Montreal Protocol signed by various countries. Okay, so this was the common but differentiated responsibilities. It talks about the countries who are the highest emitters will help those countries in reducing the emissions which do not have the financial knowledge or the technological know-how of how to deal with their greenhouse gas emissions. Okay. So with this, we come to a conclusion of our today's discussion. We have discussed all of the important climate terms which you will be hearing in news or which you might have heard in the news. And not only this, it also talks about the countries are also, developing countries are also talking about a loss and a damage fund which has to be established by the developed countries. And as of now, though it is empty, but yes, it is also important climatic term which you will be hearing, that there has to be a loss and damage fund to help the developed countries to help the developing countries. Okay, then there is just and secure energy transition, or there is this just and secure transition which will help to protect the rights of those people whose livelihood is dependent on the sectors which use fossil fuels. So you cannot make an immediate transition from fossil fuels to non-fossil fuels. It has to be a just and a safe transition for those people also who are working in the sectors which use fossil fuels for their livelihood. Okay, now let us discuss a practice question for your prelims examination. So the question is, consider the following statements. Your statement number 1 is, the Kyoto Protocol placed obligations on the set of rich and industrialized countries to cut their greenhouse gas emissions by assigned amounts. Your statement number 2 is, Paris Agreement is a legally binding agreement, and your statement number 3 is, NDCs are submitted every 5 years. Which of the following statements given above are correct? Your options are, option A is 1 and 2 only, option B is 2 and 3 only, option C is 1 and 3 only, and option D is 1, 2 and 3. Kindly drop your answers in the comment box below. Now let us discuss a practice question for your mains examination. So the question is, highlight the role of various international agreements in mitigating climate change. So you will write about what are the international agreements that have been signed, and you will write about Kyoto Protocol, Paris Agreement, and what are their aims and objectives, and how are they actually, helping the countries in mitigating the impacts of climate change. And yes, you can conclude that yes, if international law or international accountability is followed, definitely we can accelerate our fight against the climate change by making the countries more accountable for their emissions. You can conclude very holistically. I hope this session was insightful for you. If you have any feedback regarding this session, kindly drop it in the comment box below. If you liked today's discussion and found it to be helpful, kindly like the video and subscribe to our channel for more such updates. Thank you.